Many people think of EMDR as a short-term therapy process, but is that really the case? I'm going to be discussing this topic today based on my 15 years of experience as an EMDR therapist, and then I've also been an EMDR client. And in addition, I am an approved EMDR consultant, which means that I can supervise and train other EMDR therapists. So I will be bringing that knowledge base to this video. And then for those of you who are new to my channel, I'd like you to know that with my online work, I am primarily a life coach, and I created this channel to weave together tools and techniques from coaching, mindset, therapy, Buddhism, and meditation to help people live more joyful lives. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. And if you like this video, do give it a like at the end and also share with somebody if you think it might be useful for them. So I'm going to start today with the 8 stages of EMDR therapy and how long those take. I'll then share the 6 factors that I believe really impact the length of EMDR therapy treatment. Thirdly, I'd like to share what I think you can do as a client to help the EMDR therapy process. And lastly, I'd like to share some free resources that can help you be proactive in your treatment, including a free PDF that I have called Transforming Your Negative Core Beliefs, and the link is below the notes to this video. So officially, EMDR is called EMDR therapy. And most of you know EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is quite a mouthful. But the reason that EMDR therapists and the certifying body for EMDR call it EMDR therapy is that it's actually a comprehensive therapy technique. It has many stages. I'm going to walk you through those very quickly. And it is not just about the part of EMDR that gets all the press, where somebody watches the light bar or listens to alternating sounds, or the tappers, the bilateral stimulation portion of EMDR. That's the part that people notice and it sticks with them and they're curious about, but that's not the entire therapy process. But EMDR has 8 stages in the therapy process. The first stage is history and treatment planning. So this is very similar to most therapy techniques. But the first stage is for the therapist to get to know you, understand your history, understand the present situation that's causing you distress, tie it perhaps, or understand any past events that might have contributed to the present day situation. And then the treatment plan will also look forward to the future in terms of the key skills or behaviors the client can develop in terms of living the life they want to live in the future. So this initial stage can take anywhere between 1 and 3 sessions, depending upon the person, the issues that you're dealing with, your history, all of that is taken into account. During that process, you are also beginning to develop a relationship with the therapist, which is also very important to the success of the treatment. And so phase 2 is the preparation phase. And the preparation phase continues with the development of the relationship, the development of trust between you and the therapist. You're getting to know one another. That is key to this process. And the therapist will also be assessing your emotional regulation tools. How well can you regulate your emotions? And generally, the therapist will do a safe place exercise with you and probably some other relaxation techniques to help you with emotional reset during the EMDR process, which can be intense. So this preparation phase can take anywhere from 1 to 8 sessions. And if a client has complex PTSD or a lot of dissociation, the preparation phase could be much more extended as trust is developed between the client and the therapist, and as the client develops more emotional regulation tools. So phase 3 is called the assessment phase in EMDR, and this is where the client and the therapist work together on the memories and situations that will be targeted with the EMDR. So the client is asked a very specific series of questions about each target, and the client begins to rank how upsetting the targets are, to identify the negative core beliefs that go with that target, to identify a counter, a positive core belief. And the client and the therapist work together to lay out the targets that will be looked at with the active phase of the EMDR bilateral stimulation. So this assessment stage really depends on how many different memories the client will need to target and how many different issues are being addressed. And so this stage can last between 1 and probably 3 sessions, I would say, on average. And then we move into phase 4, which is what I call active processing, and it can also be called the desensitization phase. And so the client brings up the target while they do some type of bilateral stimulation. It could be the light bar, it could be a sound alternating in headsets, and it could be some bilateral tapping or holding tappers. There's different ways, and usually the therapist has already worked with you prior to stepping into this phase to see which one of those methods will work best for you. So then desensitization starts. Now, how long desensitization takes? That's a question mark. I've seen it go very, very fast, surprisingly fast, where a very intense memory can be cleared out in one session. And then I've seen it take a very long, protracted time. And I will, again, at the end of this, summarize some of the key components of what I have seen influence the length of time that EMDR can take. Now, I want to pause here briefly and just mention virtual EMDR. I do have a link below. This is an online program that allows you to do EMDR on your own, in particular, the desensitization process of EMDR. It obviously does not incorporate an entire therapy, all the components that I'm talking about, but it provides you with a system and it walks you through the steps to work on some of the desensitization on your own. So if you're working with a therapist, you can ask them if they think this would be helpful for you. And I know a lot of people who listen to my channel are very much into self-help, and I do have a couple of videos on whether trying EMDR on your own is a good idea or not. So you can take a look at those videos. But if you want to try it out, use the link below. You have to put the coupon in to get 20% off. But it's a very interesting service. I am an affiliate, and I will check back in on this for a little more information at the end of today's video. So phase 5 is called installation. Once the memory is desensitized, really the client gets that down to a 0, hopefully, possibly a 1, but the therapist, again, who's skilled and trained in EMDR is going to help you assess whether you've gotten that memory as low as possible in terms of emotions that are congruent. And that's a longer topic, but basically you try to desensitize the memory as close to 0, and then the therapist works with you on installing the positive cognition. So if you developed a negative cognition, say I'm in danger, from a situation where you actually were in danger, the positive cognition would be I'm safe enough now. And the therapist would work with you to instill that so you feel it more and more and more in the current day. Phase 6 is then a body scan. Once a memory has been processed down to 0, the positive cognition has been installed all the way up, then there is a body scan to make sure that there's no body memories that are going with the EMDR memory. Phase 7 is closure, and here again, the therapist working with you will assess what kind of closure you need, because to the extent that you're working on memories and a lot of upset feelings come up, you might need to reset prior to ending the therapy session. On the other hand, if you can handle a high level of emotion and you are okay leaving with that emotion, it might continue to process for you during the course of the week, and that might actually help the therapy. So this is really something to be worked on with the therapist, but the therapist will be thinking about closure at the end of each session. And then phase 8 is reevaluation. So it's both a reevaluation of the target that you're currently working on, as well as a reevaluation of the overall treatment plan. And that happens really regularly with EMDR, which I find super useful. So, okay, how long do these 8 phases take? Well, let's talk about it because it depends. But the main factors that I have seen impact how long it takes include what your goal is. If your goal is simply to desensitize yourself for a current event or a particularly upsetting past event, it will be a shorter course of treatment than if your goal is overall to solve a larger problem of anxiety or depression that might be connected to the traumas that you have had. So what's your goal with the therapy? Number 2 is, what issue are you targeting? EMDR can work very quickly with single incident traumas, but with chronic, ongoing, recurring traumas, it takes much longer. I think that EMDR is very, very effective for panic attacks. That course of treatment, I'd say on average, has been about 6 months when I've worked with people with panic attacks, which is relatively short in terms of really getting over a panic attack. But ongoing depression can be a much, much longer, extended course of treatment, as well as complex PTSD and other issues. So really, what's the issue that you're going into therapy for? Number 3, what was your childhood like? If you had a pretty good childhood, you grew up with a lot of resources, a lot of strengths, and you get to adulthood without having experienced a lot of trauma, and you have a single incident trauma, generally in those situations, treatment moves very quickly. But I would say that is pretty rare. I had one client who had a great childhood, a very, very major serious trauma as an adult, and she cleared out in 4 sessions. She was better. That is highly unusual in my experience. However, I also have a lot of colleagues who work with first responders. And in general, they say treatment with the first responders is very quick. Now, they are basically desensitizing current day events. So that's another situation where I've heard that treatment tends to move pretty quickly. But if it doesn't for you, don't feel like there's something wrong, right? There's so many complicated factors that come into this. And then in my experience, very few people get through life with good childhoods, a lot of resources, and a minimal amount of trauma. So most people have had some type of ongoing little T traumas or some level of recurring traumas through their life that impact how long the processing is going to take and the overall treatment will take. Which leads me to the number 4, which is how many recurring events with similar themes have happened to you in your life. If you had an event as a child and that recurred over and over, then EMDR can still be very effective, but it is not going to be speedy quick. So having said this, I still feel that EMDR is the most effective technique that I have used with clients. I really see dramatic change, dramatic improvement, but this is not necessarily like 6 weeks and you're done. I just want people to know that because there is a misconception out there in the world. And this is a frequent question. How many sessions will I need? Well, I don't know. It depends on a lot of factors. So I'm going to talk about 2 more areas that impact the length of treatment. So number 5 is dissociation and how much dissociation the client has. So if you have a lot of dissociative tendencies, this is something the therapist hopefully is assessing with you early in the treatment planning. But if you have depersonalization, derealization, if you dissociate from your feelings, you go numb, treatment can take a long time. And dissociation is often a sign of some type of complex PTSD, which again would mean that a slower course of treatment might be helpful. So then number 6, which is a little bit related to number 5, number 6 is emotional regulation. How are you at regulating your emotions? If you're pretty good, like you can keep coping no matter what, you can get up and get to work, take care of the kids, whatever's on your plate to do, kind of no matter how you feel, and you're able to get yourself uplifted when you need to, calm yourself down when you need to, then treatment will be quicker. And also usually clients with high emotional regulation are able to tolerate a higher level of feeling coming up during the processing. So I want to share 2 things that I think that clients can do to assist in the process of EMDR. And obviously there's many, many things, and I encourage you to be proactive with your therapist. If you are curious, why is this taking so long? Should I be doing something differently? What's your assessment of me? Ask. It's okay to ask. If a therapist says something that rubs you the wrong way, it's okay to bring it up with them. You can say, hey, that really rubbed me the wrong way. And then you can see what kind of response you get back, right? So I do encourage you to be assertive about your treatment and about moving towards feeling more healthy. I encourage you to do that. So the 2 things I have seen that clients can do, One of them is to practice the emotional regulation tools. So if the therapist helps you with a safe place exercise, maybe you can practice that in between sessions. If the therapist is recommending meditation or yoga or some type of physiological relaxation, practice between sessions. That is something active that you can do that will assist your course of treatment. And then the second one I want to mention is to be honest with your therapist. So often clients hold back because of shame or because of discomfort or taboo topics. That's what your therapist is there for. So I encourage you to be honest, be open. If you have some compulsive habits that have been triggered by the traumas you've gone through, share that information that's relevant. Working on those might need to be incorporated in your treatment plan. So I guess that's really 3 suggestions. Be proactive about your treatment, practice emotional regulation tools, and be open and honest with your therapist. And as I'm coming to the end of this video, I do want to emphasize that I would encourage you to treat EMDR therapy as therapy. It is a process. You may go for a while, make some progress, then you might hit a plateau. You might need to return to therapy. It's an iterative process. Healing and personal development take time. And while EMDR is more goal-oriented than most therapies and more structured, it is still dependent on a healing relationship between the client and the therapist. So I mentioned I would come back and talk about a handful of resources that can help you be more proactive in your treatment. And one of them is the PDF that I mentioned, Transforming Your Negative Core Beliefs, and you can download that below. Another is a free webinar I have called Rewiring Your Brain for Joy and Confidence. And this webinar does not address EMDR in particular, but it is about how do we rewire what is going on in here to live more joyful lives. And I share a method that I have developed and been using with clients. So you might find that very helpful. And then there is the virtual EMDR website. Now, the other 2 resources are free, the PDF and the webinar. Virtual EMDR is not. I think you get 3 free days, and I do have a 20% off coupon, but it provides you with the ability to do unlimited dual stimulation processing sessions. And if you're working with a therapist, you may want to ask whether this is a good idea for you to do in between sessions to help with the desensitization. And if you're thinking of trying this on your own, I do have a video on, is it a good idea for you? Because it does tie to some of those factors that I mentioned that can make EMDR a more extended treatment. So I wish you lots of health and healing on your journey. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, please do give it a like, a thumbs up. That helps a lot. Share it with somebody you think it might be helpful for, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And I'll see you next time.